Welcome to Stress-Free IEP. You do not need to do it all alone. With your host, Frances Shefter, Principal of Shefter Law. You can get more details and catch prior episodes at www.shefterlaw.com. The Stress-Free IEP video podcast is also posted on YouTube and LinkedIn, and you can listen to episodes through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Now, here's the host of Stress-Free IEP, Frances Shefter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Today's guest is Caitlin Garman, who is the Director of Admissions and Outreach at BroadFutures. BroadFutures is a one-of-a-kind mentoring, training, and internship program for neurodivergent young people. And before coming to BroadFutures, Caitlin worked in a DC public charter school as a social worker and transition coordinator, supporting students with IEPs reach their goals and plan for post-secondary success. And if you've watched my show before, you know from me, transition's been a huge thing because it's unfortunately so often neglected or just kind of brushed over on the IEP part. So Caitlin, tell me a little bit about how you got started with BroadFutures and what services you provide.
Sure. Thank you. And thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today. So like you said in your intro, I actually started my career in education teaching, which I think everyone should have some experience teaching because it just opens up a whole new perspective.
Definitely.
But then moved on to school social work and transition counseling and did that for about 10 years and worked at a high school in DC. And at the time, BroadFutures was a very young organization, very new, but one of the resources that I had in my back pocket for my students who were about to graduate from high school. And so I worked with BroadFutures for many, many years when I was in schools and doing transition work, and then decided when I wanted to leave schools that would be a good option to kind of move on over. But yeah, I'd love to share a little about BroadFutures. It's a really, really cool program. Like I said, I used to refer my students there all of the time. And it's one of the reasons that I was really excited to come work for this organization. We're based in Washington, DC. We're a nonprofit, and we really exist for two reasons. One is to provide these life-changing internship work experiences for neurodivergent young people. And the other is to really push employers to be more neuro-inclusive and more inclusive of disability in general. And we're really trying to shift the landscape in what we consider diversity, and that disability and neurodivergence should be included in diversity. So we run internship programs. We place young neurodivergent people in internships throughout the DC area. We provide them mentoring and training on career readiness skills, professional communication, executive functioning. And then we coach the employers about how to implement accommodations, how to work with folks who are neurodivergent, how to just be a more inclusive space. We find that our employers really love the work that we do because it turns out best practices for folks who have disabilities or who are neurodivergent are just best practices in general, and make their workplaces better for everyone who works there, whether or not they're neurodivergent.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you work with the children or young adults after they graduate high school, or do you start like before they graduate? What does that look like?
Yeah, good question. We do a little bit of both. Our internship programs are for folks specifically right after they've graduated high school. So our interns are 18 to 26. So a lot of our folks have either just graduated high school or they've done a little bit of college and they're taking a break. And some of our interns have even finished college and they just haven't landed anywhere, right? Because the skills it takes to get through college and the skills it takes to get a job are so different. So we serve kind of a broad range of folks. But one thing that we do a lot of in the DC area is we put on a lot of workshops for high schools. And so we work with a lot of juniors and seniors on things like building up their resumes and mock interviewing, and also just this conversation around how do you talk about having a disability in the workplace? Like, when is it appropriate to disclose? How do you disclose? How do you advocate for appropriate accommodations and have that conversation with your direct manager? So we do a lot of those workshops for our high schoolers because, to your point, transition is just tough. It's so often overlooked, right? There are larger goals often on the IEP. We're trying to get to graduation. We're trying to make sure kids can read, kids can do their math. And sometimes the transition part just gets a little overlooked. So we're happy to come in and help support that in our DC area schools.
That's great. So do you only work with kids that get high school diplomas, or do you also work with the ones that are on certificate track?
Right now, we only do folks who have a high school diploma, a GED, or an equivalency. We're really always trying to expand our employer base. And right now, our employers are asking for interns that have at least a high school diploma. But we are really, we're 11 years in. This organization is 11 years into this work. And so we're always looking to expand. And so that might be one area that we try to go into a little bit later. But right now, high school diploma only.
That makes sense. And that's so great because I think back to high school, like when I was graduating high school, or even, I went into teaching. So right out of it was a little easier right out of college because it's like you get a job at teaching, And so
Yeah.
it was pretty like there wasn't much of how do I apply and how do I do stuff. But, like even out of high school, like who knows what they want to do and who knows how they want to do it. And what a great idea to be able to do an internship. And so, kind of get your feet wet a little bit.
Yeah.
So you said you're a nonprofit. So I'm assuming, do you charge like clients? What does that look like?
We do, and it's tough. We've gone over this. We have a lot of different funding sources. We do a lot of fundraising. We work with a lot of grantors. Right now, we do have a participation fee for our DC programs, but we try to make it as accessible as possible. So we have a scholarship program where we meet full financial need, and we also work with all the local vocal rehabilitation agencies. So a lot of the students, and hopefully, folks listening to this, right? If your student has an IEP in high school, man, hopefully you're connected to your local vocal rehabilitation agency because there are often a lot of services available if you can get connected. But those local VRs will often pay a portion or all of our participation fee. So we've really tried to make the program as accessible as possible while also upholding really all of the work that it takes, right? We're committed to having twice weekly mentoring, executive function coaches on staff to really be able to coach our employers, right? We want to keep the quality of our program up.
That's great. And students or I guess clients, young adults, do they get paid at the internships?
They do. That's one of the most exciting parts. All of our internships are paid. They're paid at least DC minimum wage, which right now is $17.50. It's pretty high. Yeah. So, you're getting real work experience. You're getting that experience of getting a paycheck. And so it's not sort of a loss, just, let me do a free internship and nothing out of it. But you are getting that paid work experience.
Which is so great because that it's sometimes it's hard to do an internship. And if you're not getting paid, like how are you going to pay your bills or do anything else? And, some people might have mom and dad, but some people don't,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, especially in DC. That's so awesome. So then, I'm just thinking about like an IEPs, because I know I had somebody on the show and I'm trying to remember her name, but she was a mom and talking about how with her child, like schools tend to, I don't want to say pigeonhole or sell them short, but like kind of like you're on this path and not plan, and how, she was talking about how important it is to like know where you want your child to be, know where your child wants your child to be early on so that planning can start even earlier.
Yeah.
So you said you do kind of do stuff in junior and senior year. Do you go any earlier of that, or is it just junior and seniors that you guys work with?
Right now, we just work mostly with juniors and seniors because we really like to talk about our program and we want to get kids excited to apply. And that's kind of where most of our programming fits with, upper high school, like classwork, right? When we come in and do workshops around resumes or interviewing. But I think to your point, one thing that's so important for parents to think about and to think about with their kids, in high school is that there isn't just one sort of path that you have to follow after high school. We talk a lot and work a lot at our organization around this idea of like sort of getting off the conveyor belt, right? You don't have to do 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, and then go get a job. There's so many more options now. We have a lot of students who are taking a gap year after high school who come and join our program for part of the year. And we're an accredited gap year program. So I've gotten to be in that space a bit. And there's so many amazing gap year programs out there, whether they're international or domestic, and they're focused on volunteering, or other programs like ours that are focused on work experience. That can be a great break for kids, especially our neurodivergent folks who, high school is really tough and can be really tiring. And maybe they need a break before they going to college and doing the same thing, sitting in classes and intensive reading and writing. Or we've even got a lot of kids nowadays who are taking gap years in the middle of college, right? And so saying, okay, I've done a couple of years of college. Now I'm going to take a step back, get some work experience, get some volunteer experience, really see what I want to do, what I'm interested in before finishing my degree, and making sure that my degree is really going to serve me in my career. Because sometimes, you go straight high school, college, and you end up senior year, like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't have any real work experience. So I think that's really important for parents to think about, that you don't have to do just, 4 years of high school, 4 years of college done. You can really, there's so many more options now. And if your child is saying, oh, I don't want to go to college, maybe it's that they just want to break from it, and want to do a program like ours for a little bit before taking on that next challenge.
And so for your program, I'm just thinking along the lines of whether, taking the gap year, whether you talk about what the different careers would be like if you had a high school diploma, if you had a college degree, what this would look like versus if you don't, these are your options.
Yeah. One thing that we really encourage and we work a lot with our interns on doing is just networking throughout whatever organization they're interning in. So, more than just talking to their manager, talking to other folks who work there, kind of what was your path to get here? What kind of educational background do you have, right? We have one example is we've got a couple of partnerships in hospitality. And so we work with a few hotels in the DC area. And that's a great example because there are folks all along the spectrum, right? There are folks who have just a high school diploma, don't even have a high school diploma. There are folks in, different departments of the hotel that have advanced degrees in hotel management or business management. And so it's really nice for our interns to kind of think holistically of like, okay, I like being in this hotel. This is a cool space. Now, where do I want to go with this? Do I want to work concierge front desk? Do I want to go back to school and be more on the management side? Do I want to work on event planning side, right? And so that we really encourage them to network and kind of get in touch with all those different people at whatever organization they're in to figure out exactly what you're talking about. What are the different options? If I like this environment, what are the different options? What do I need to be thinking about? Okay, now, do I need to go to college? Do I need to just get a certificate? Can I just try to network and continue working here now? But that's something, right, that coming out of high school, most kids haven't even thought about. They might have a large idea of, oh, I want to work with people, or I want to work, I want to work with kids. But what does that look like? Because there are lots of different options.
Right. Which is kind of funny because it's the same thing with law. Like everybody thinks lawyers can do anything, which technically when we go to law school, we can come out and do everything, which is just scary because you can represent something in a felony murder or write a will. And they're so different.
Yeah, exactly.
But there are so many areas of the law also that people don't even realize exist.
Yeah.
So I'm sure with careers and stuff like that, it's just, there are so many things out there that I'm sure high school students don't have an idea. My husband the other day said to my daughter when she said something about she wanted to be very, very rich when she got older, and she's 10. I'm like, great idea. My husband said, find what you love to do and learn how to make money doing it.
Yep.
And that's exactly. And so the internship program sounds like this is the idea of figuring out, you thought you wanted to go this way, but once you got in there, is it? So what happens if somebody goes in and they're in an internship program and they're like, after a month or two, they're like, yeah, this is not for me. This is just not going to work.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah. So our programs are purposely 8 to 10 weeks, right? So they're pretty manageable, right? So it's about a month or 2.5 months in the winter. One thing that we talk to folks a lot about is, we try to place them in an internship that's really going to be aligned with their interests and skills. But if that situation happens, right, where they're saying, this is not what I like to do, what we really try to do is talk to them about, that's okay. That's part of this experience, is figuring out what you do and don't want to do. And so now you can at least check something off your bucket, right? Is it that you don't like being in an office? Is it that you don't like this particular type of work. But then what we also talk a lot about is there are a lot of skills that you're going to need whatever career you go into, right? Things like organization, responding to emails, talking on the phone, all of these little soft skills, talking to people in the office are things that are going to translate even if your career ends up being very different than this experience. So we really try to encourage our interns to just kind of embrace the whole experience and say, okay, even if this isn't the exact job that I want, one, I figured out something I can cross off my list, which is helpful, right? I came from a family of teachers and graduated college and was like, okay, I'm going to go teach. Turns out I didn't love teaching multiplication, right? I didn't like that at all. Had I done, some teaching experience, maybe I would have figured that out sooner but I, through that experience learned, oh, I do love working with kids and families, right? And so found my niche through that. So one, like reminding kids, it's okay to cross things off your bucket. And there's still so many skills that you can work on throughout this experience that are going to serve you, whether you're going to college after this, whether you're going to look for another career. There's so many things you can still gain from just having this work experience that are really going to serve you in the future.
Right. And that totally makes sense. So you said 8 to 12 week program. Is like that it? You do the program once and you're done?
You can do it. We have folks come back and do it more than once, especially folks, because we have such a large age range, right? 18 to 26, especially folks who have figured out, maybe they've done our program for one summer and figured out, I actually know what career direction I want to go in. So they come join us again with a different internship. We have some folks who will stay on with us for not in their internship, but for the mentoring portion, who find that really helpful and supportive. And especially folks who are going on, not going back to college, but going on to find another career, find another job. So they'll keep their mentor support going because they found it really helpful to have those check-ins and problem solving and just someone to help keep them accountable. So that's definitely an option for them. But yeah, it's meant to be sort of a moment in time internship. And our goal is really to help kids really build some of those foundational skills that are going to help them, whether they are going on to post-secondary education or going on to get another job. Even though it's kind of a short period, we're hoping that they'll just take some of these skills that are really transferable, advocating for yourself, some of the stress reduction stuff we do, talking about your disability, all that kind of stuff is going to be so helpful wherever they're headed after our program.
Right. That makes sense. Sorry, I just lost train of thought. My lawn guys just walked in the backyard, so this is going to get interesting.
Oh, good.
So the dogs are downstairs, so hopefully it won't be an issue. So I mean, like, it just sounds like such an amazing program because I know, like a lot of high school kids, they don't know what they're going to do. And I know in DC especially, it gets even harder with not having as many programs available, that I know of at least, that having something like a gap year is kind of helpful. And not even to say DC, just in general now, I think since COVID, just who knows what they want to do, and so it can get so challenging.
Yeah.
And, that was one of the things, like, do you work with like the abuse and the neglect system at all for the kids?
We do a little bit. We have contacts so we really work with schools and universities to recruit students, but then we work with a lot of therapists, counselors, community organizations essentially we work with anyone who has contact with young adults who are neurodivergent, right? To kind of get our information out there. Because one of our goals, we're really working on expansion these next 5 years. And we really want to make sure that our program is just folks who might benefit from it have the information. I think I was super lucky working at the school that I did, that my predecessor happened, to meet our founder, Carolyn, and get in contact with her. And that's kind of how we got connected. And then I had 2 to 3 kids every year go through the BroadFutures program. But, had I not had that connection, I don't know if I would have had this resource for the kids that I'm working with. And so, one of my goals in my role is really to make sure that every kid in DC who might benefit from this knows it exists. And it's at least an option for them when they're thinking about, what do I want to do after high school?
And do you only do kids that are neurodivergent?
We do. So we define neurodivergence as a learning disability, ADHD, or autism. Now, many of our participants have additional diagnoses, comorbid disorders. A lot of our participants struggle with anxiety, OCD, and that's totally fine. We're used to that. A lot of our curriculum deals with that. We purposely incorporate stress reduction. We have a yoga teacher come in and teach folks. Yeah, she's really cool. She teaches a lot of yoga poses that you can do at a desk.
Wow.
Like 5-minute little quick hit. So if you are, in the moment in your internship or, in life, you're sitting in a college class or you're at your job and you're, feeling overwhelmed and you can't go, take a half an hour walk or go listen to music or some other strategy that you have. Now you've got some little 5-minute, okay, I can do a couple of 5-minute things to really ground myself and bring myself back down.
Which is so important for all of us, especially, I would say, especially with our neurodivergent, youth, young adults, of just knowing how to take that minute, because it can get so overwhelming and overstimulating and
overstimulating. And work requires so much flexibility, right? As much as we think and as much as we work with our employers on, giving a schedule ahead of time or, planning out tasks ahead of time, the reality of the working world is, right, things come up, emails come in, new people come into the office, and it just requires so much flexibility. And so for our interns, that's something they really work hard on. It takes a lot of mental energy to be that flexible if that's not a strength of yours. And so it can be really stressful. And one thing we really want to do is acknowledge that it's okay. It's working is stressful. That's okay. How do we balance that so you still feel like yourself, you can still feel grounded and you're not, just exhausted at the end of your day.
Right. And then, it's like, I'm loving this more and more because I'm just thinking about like all the things of like, having that working experience and having that support system, I hear of kids getting jobs right out of high school and stuff. And like within a month they're quitting because it's just, they don't get it. Not they don't get it, but it's just, they don't have the support they need. They don't understand. They don't, like this is normal. Work is not all, it's not all like high school. You're not going to get the supports like your IEP had. You're not going to get that. And there are challenges, but it's normal to have challenges. Even people that have been around for how many years doing the same career,
Exactly.
Like we as lawyers talk about it all the time. Like, I've been practicing law for almost 2 decades now. And like, I still get nervous going into a courtroom because it's just, this is normal, but this is what I do. And this is how I prepare. And this is how I learn how to, deal with the anxiety and the stress of it. And it's such a great skill for our kids to get right out of high school or, or even in college as a young adult, to learn how to adjust and be able to adapt well.
We talk about that piece a lot that you say, when you graduate high school, your IEP goes away, but your disability does not.
Right.
And that's a big reason why we exist because, we kind of, there's all this support in high school and, you've got this legal document where you have to have accommodations and all your teachers are told about it. And, your parents are brought in so they can automatically advocate for you. And then you graduate high school and it's like, oh, wow, now this is all on me. I have to figure out what I need, what I'm good at. I have to figure out how to ask for those things. I have to feel comfortable asking for those things. And so it's such a huge jump to transition. And so, we're trying to fill some of that gap, right? Be this little kind of step down of, okay, now you can have a work experience where we're not going to, give your employer an IEP and say, do all these things. We're going to give your employer some coaching, but we're going to really coach you about, okay, what's working well for you? What's not working in this experience? Okay. So if it's too loud right there, let's brainstorm. What could you ask for? Is it feel appropriate that you could advocate to work in a different office for a few hours a day so that you can really drill down on some tasks? Or does it feel appropriate to ask if you can use headphones during the workday? Like we want to help our folks start thinking about, okay, all these things that were available to you in high school, there are ways to modify them and still use the things that were helpful to you in the working world, but you just got to be able to advocate for it for yourself.
Right. Which is technically what the transition plan in the IEP section is supposed to do, is to prepare kids and teach them this. But it's rare that I've seen a transition plan done well. And it's usually in schools that they actually have a staff member that's a transition planning staff member focused on it, but like so often we'll look at 4-year colleges. I'm like, seriously, like how is that different from what every other, junior is doing that wants to go to college,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like putting that plan in place of, this is what you use in the classroom. What does that look like in a work setting? Because, even, the kids going from high school to college, a lot of times they're like, they walk into the disability office, the parents say, here's my kid's IEP implemented. It's like, yeah, no, that's not the way this works.
Exactly. And to your point about sort of the transition plan, what we do at the end of our program kind of mimics that. We give a big final report to our interns, which I think they find really helpful because it kind of outlines, one, all the growth that they've made. So we get feedback from their employers and put all those amazing things that they've done throughout the internship. But then we also dedicate a big section to saying to them, okay, we're going to lay out for you all the strategies that we saw you using this summer, all the different things that you did for yourself, whether that was, really using your calendar to calendar out work time versus phone time versus whatever, or, taking your deep breaths every 2 hours, making sure you take a break to work on your stamina. And then we're going to put more suggestions of like, hey, if this internship had been another 2 months, here's some strategies we would have continued to suggest to you, so that kids can really take with them, like, okay, the next work experience or college or whatever, okay, here are some strategies I know helped me in real time in this job. And so I can ask for these in the future. I can remind myself, oh, right, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I haven't been taking those breaks every 30 minutes. Maybe I should go back to doing that.
Right. That's amazing. So they actually walk away with a plan and how to implement it and what they can do. Because then it's like, it's not only the experience, it's how to keep the experience going and how it's going to make that difference in the world.
Exactly.
So that's so awesome. I'm trying to think of what else we didn't address that we needed to address. Sorry, for those that don't know, I am a parent and I have a 2-month-old foster child that's getting a little fussy right now. But
all good.
He's doing right.
I think one other thing that can be helpful for parents when you're working with high school students is really just helping your high schooler figure out, like, it doesn't have to be an exact career, but kind of like what direction they want to go in. There are so many resources out there. There's the ONET, which I'm sure, folks who are in transition planning know about, right? It's a free online survey where kids go through and can kind of get information about different career paths and kind of, it's an online survey. So they kind of click through a bunch of stuff and it gives them a broad sense of, hey, you might be interested in these following careers, right? So it gives kids even a place to even start thinking about what kind of career they would want. And then they can start really being targeted when they're thinking about getting a work experience. There's also this really cool one, Go Pursue, which is like LinkedIn for kids that's just started. I met the founder a little bit ago. It's very neat. It allows students, so high school and college students, to go on and just network with professionals, totally free app that's kind of similar to LinkedIn, right? So, you're interested in being a lawyer. Okay, you can find a lawyer on the site. You can ask them, what education did you have? Did you have internships? Kind of, how did you get started in this? So just anything that gives kids those real life experiences, thinking about what they want to do, talking to people who have careers, getting that real work experience is going to set them up for success in the future.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask. Do you guys do an assessment at the beginning when somebody joins with you to help them determine what area and what they would want?
We don't. We rely really a lot on our interview, which is sort of like a mini assessment, but we do an interview and an application process that really gets at kind of what are the skills and experiences that you have. And we really talk to kids about, okay, you said you have a really good experience reading and writing. Tell me about what those were. Was that in a class? What kind of reading and writing was that? Or, experience with computer programming languages. Tell me about those experiences, so that we can use that to really like internally match them with one of our employer partners.
Got it. And for like employers, like, are the interns going through a true hiring process with the employers, or do you guys do the match?
We do all the matching. Yeah. So most of our employers have worked with us for a long time and really trust us. I think we've really proven ourselves over the years to really find quality candidates who are a good match for them. So folks interview with us, with our staff for our program. One reason we also like to do that is because we can make it an inclusive hiring experience. We keep our interviews short. We keep them to 30 minutes. We give kids the questions ahead of time because we're interested in learning more about them. We're not interested in, a gotcha moment. And then we're not looking at things like, oh, is there full eye contact? Are you in full professional dress? We haven't talked to you about those things yet. So that's okay, right? That's not going to bar you from an internship. So we do all the hiring. And then what we do is we usually do a little write-up of our candidates and then send them to the employer and say, hey, this is, we're thinking Johnny has the right sort of qualifications. He's super interested in this work. Does this feel good to you? And then that's how we make our matches.
Oh, that's awesome. So when people like, I'm trying to think, like want to get in touch with you, what's like the best way? Like, is this something like, okay, a junior's thinking about it, or should they wait until after high school? Like, when's the best time to start thinking about getting in touch with you guys?
Yeah, I would say, as early as you want, but definitely senior year is a great time. If you go on our website, BroadFutures.org, there's a lot of information there, but there's also a link to register for our information sessions. We have an info session every month. It's the fourth Thursday of every month where we just kind of talk through what does our program look like? What does an average day look like? Kind of all the nitty gritty so that folks can really get a good sense of what our program is. And so that's the best way to find out more information and kind of see, is this something that would be interesting to you?
And should it be the young adults, or is it the parents, or a combination?
I think both. We love it. So, all throughout our process, our application process, we always include parents. We include parents fully up until the point they actually started their internship, right? And then we talk to parents about, okay, now you've got to release a little bit, even though it's hard. You've got to release a little bit and trust us to be working with this young person. But I think a combination of both. I talk to lots of parents, and lots of parents come to our information sessions. That's their baby. They want to, I want to make sure they're sending them off to a good program. But ultimately, the young person has to be interested in the program, has to want to participate and want to do the program. So I think either or, both, anything is great.
That's great. And for I know I have a lot of listeners that are teachers and administrators and stuff. And so if they're like, oh, this is great, I would love to get, something at our school, like what would that look like?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Could reach out to me. You can find me through the website. Our information at BroadFutures.org is our email and phone number is on the website. But yeah, I would love to come in, whether it's virtual or in person, do a workshop with any schools, do an information session, just talk to kids and families, how formally or informally they want it. I'd love to get the word out.
So do you do that, like you said, families or with the kids? So would you do that like as during school, or like in back to school night type thing? Yes. Or like anything?
Yeah. So we do a lot of, if there's schools who feel like they have a lot of interest, we'll come and do an information session just for them. So we can come do those in person. We've come to events like back to school night, or some places have open houses. Sometimes we offer just a virtual session because it's easier for parents, but it'll be, we'll offer it to just parents of, XYZ school. And so we can really answer questions specifically about their students, or really talk about their student population specifically.
Right. And are you able to talk about like any of the companies that you guys work with?
Yeah, sure. On our website, we have a huge list of a lot of the companies that we partner with. But this summer, I can talk about a few highlights. We had someone at Congressman Trone's office, and which was awesome, right in Maryland. He was like a political junkie, so like loved the idea of being in a congressman's office, and did a lot of constituency work. I always struggle with that word, but was able to talk to people. So he was able to get that whole office experience, but managed their big database, talking to the residents, addressing their concerns, kind of floating their concerns across the place. Who else did we have this summer? We had someone working at Brookings Institute, a research institute, and he had just graduated college, so his skills were a little bit farther ahead, right? And really wanted to get to work, wants to have a career in advocacy, so spent a lot of the summer working with his supervisor there, who was writing a book, and so he was doing some really deep research, finding sources, working with him, and also got to do a lot of networking events. We had someone at Hank's Oyster Bar this summer at the Wharf.
Oh, cool.
He was working front of house. He was really practicing. He really wanted to practice his customer service skills, and really wanted to be in an environment where he was going to be pushed a little, right? Where he was going to have to deal with a little bit of stimuli, and where he was going to have to deal with customers. So he got to work front of the house and kind of learn all about how a restaurant system works. He got a lot of that experience with customers.
That's awesome. Yeah, because that was like of course what pops into my head is like the bigger companies, the CVSs, and those are the typicals. But it's so cool that you guys go out. Do you like go out and find companies based on kids that apply, or what does that look like?
Yeah, we have a member of our team whose almost whole job is to do employer outreach. And she just works to find companies that are interested in this, but haven't figured out how to develop their own program, essentially, right? Because there are a lot of companies who are interested in expanding their diversity and in having something with neurodivergence, but just aren't sure how. And so we do a ton of outreach to find these companies that might be interested in hosting 1 intern, 5 interns, however many, to really kind of get the training from us and get this experience with a wonderful intern that we can provide them.
So super companies that are like, might be listening, because a lot of,
Yeah.
are companies also that are like, wow, this is great. I want my company to get involved. How should they get in touch with you? What's the best process for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing. They can email on our website, it's info@broadfutures.org, and we have our number. They can reach out to us and we'll have our employer specialists get in touch and kind of talk through, okay, what does this look like? What's the training involved? What's the time commitment? And we can kind of go from there. We are always excited to get new employer partners.
That is so awesome. Sorry, it's getting a little fussy.
That's okay.
It's so funny because, they could, with babies, as we all know, sometimes they're great and chill for hours on hours, and sometimes it's just not working.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. I'm trying to think what else. We went through everybody, so how employers should get in touch with you, how kids or parents should get in touch with you, how schools can get in touch with you. It just sounds like you guys have it so well-rounded already of ways of everybody to get involved. And then you said you're a nonprofit. So if people want to donate, what does that look like?
Great point.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. We always welcome donations. It's really, to run a program like ours is really kids. So we are always very thankful for any donations. There's a button on our website. We also have our big gala in November, Voices of Now. So we would love any contributions, or anyone who's just interested. I encourage to head to the website and check it out.
That is awesome. That was going to be the next question. Do you guys do a big fundraising? I love that people do galas because they're just fun.
It's fun. It is. We get, members from our community. We have alums come. We have, parents come. We've got members of our employer community. And it's just nice to kind of see in one big space, all these folks who are committed to this mission and creating a more neuro-inclusive world.
Yeah, which is so important these days because it's just, it's thankfully people are more aware of it now, because I know there's just been challenges for our neurodiverse kids for so much and so long, and and young adults, and the awareness for employers and adults of you can ask for accommodations, and it's more than just what ADA says and all that other stuff of having a large screen or, whatever it is, a wheelchair ramp or, accessibility, that there's other things that employers can help. Because I know there's a lot of our kids out there or adults, with disability, and I hate calling them disabilities, with neurodivergence, that their brain works differently is the way I like to say it, that they might not be good at XYZ, but they're amazing at ABC. Yeah. And if you figure out how to tap into that, okay, maybe we won't have them stand up and do presentations, but they could do the back end stuff and get that information out there or whatever it is, or they're better doing this and that. And it can be such an amazing employee if everybody taps into each person's, actual, their strengths, and builds on them.
Our interns are amazing humans. They're so talented. They're so bright. They're so wonderful. And they're so often overlooked because of these other pieces. And so it's wonderful to see our interns grow over the summer and kind of flourish. And it's also wonderful to get this feedback every year that we get from our employers of this intern was amazing and we had such a positive experience. And, that's opened our minds a little bit to possibilities. You're right away in the hiring. Now we've got the experience of seeing this intern who if we'd interviewed this person, might have said, I don't know if you're a fit, but now we've had this experience where, given the right accommodations, this person was absolutely phenomenal.
And that's what I was saying. I can just imagine with interviews for especially some of the kids on the spectrum that can't make the eye contact or miss the social cues. I can imagine don't do very well on interviews because, it's just, it's a 30-minute, 45-minute with one person or with a group of people, and that's overwhelming. And how do you show your true self? I mean, for neurotypical adults, it's hard, like add
Exactly.
everything else on top,
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
this has been so awesome. Like, I love it because it's just, you guys hit everything and that's where I've always said there's a gap
Yeah.
with what our kids can do. And,
Yep.
for those kids that aren't necessarily ready to go straight to college,
Yep.
but want careers,
Yep.
and not just jobs when they get
Yep.
out. Like, this is what they need. This is the
Yep.
program.
Absolutely.
So your website, I know we're going to link it all below, but it's
BroadFutures.org.
.org. Perfect. This has been so awesome and wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all your wisdom and all your information for everyone to be able to get involved and help our neurodiverse young adults get into the right positions.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so wonderful to chat and share all this fun stuff with you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Stress-Free IEP with your host, Frances Shefter. Remember, you do not need to do it all alone. You can reach Frances through schefterlaw.com, where prior episodes are also posted. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing the show with others through YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more.